of Jesus. But take a look and see when they were written down. We know that Paul's letters are written within 20 to 30 years. We know that 3 of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, are written within 40 years of Christ's death. We know that John comes much later, around 92 AD. So 60 years is the latest we get. Now, hold on a minute. Even if you look at those 4, 2 of them actually knew Jesus, did they not? Matthew and John were actually disciples of Jesus. They lived with him. They saw what he did. They heard what he said. They wrote down what they knew. And the other 2, Mark and Luke, got it from the eyewitnesses. So at the most, what you would say, the earliest that we have for the hadith and the sirah and the tafsir, because the tafsir would be the commentaries, that's Paul's letters. Commentaries means explains what Jesus did. That's what Paul does in Ephesus, in Philippi, in Corinth, in Colossus. He then writes and expounds on what Jesus said and did. There's the commentaries. The tahriq would be the book of Acts, the history of the early church. So we've got the exact same 4 genre in the New Testament that they have in Islam. But whereas our tafsir and our sunnah of Jesus comes within 15 to 60 years of Christ's death, written by the eyewitnesses and those who knew the eyewitnesses, the sunnah of Muhammad comes to 200 to 300 years later. If we were dependent on the gospel of Jesus Christ from what Islam is dependent on, we would know nothing about what Jesus did or said until the 3rd century. How would we defend him? Yet, is this the first time you're hearing this? Is this taught in any school? Why aren't they teaching this in Bible schools and seminaries? Why aren't we being told just how hopeless an authority Islam is dependent on? That's just the first problem. We're going to get into lots of problems today. Now, that's why the scholars are now asking some very deep questions. They're asking and saying, Islam as we know it did not exist in the 7th century, but evolved over a period of 200 to 300 years. The Quran probably was not revealed to one man in 22 years, but looks like it evolved over a period of 50 to 100 years. That's a pretty big statement. Therefore, their conclusion is the history of Islam, at least from the time of Caliph Abdul Malik, he is the one, the Caliph from the Marwanid Caliphate under the Umayyad Caliphate from 685 to 705. It is he that we're now looking at, and almost all the scholars are looking at him because that's where we see Islam beginning. But Muhammad died in 632. He comes to power in 685. Do your maths. You can see the problem. We'll unpack that a bit. So the scholars' conclusion, and this is what they're asking, if so much of the history of early Islam was written down so late, why did they take so long to write it down? Ask your Muslim friends this. I ask them all the time, and they say, well, they were illiterate. Hold on a minute. Illiterate. Do you really believe that they were illiterate? Remember, by 642, they had taken over Basra, Baghdad, Damascus, Jerusalem, and Cairo. Within 10 years of the Prophet Muhammad's death, within 10 years, the 5 great cities of the Levant were under their jurisdiction. And outside of Jerusalem, they're still under their jurisdiction, 1,400 years later. By the end of the 7th century, by the time Abdul Malik comes to power, we're still in the 7th century. They controlled all the land from Spain all the way to India. Are you telling me that nobody between Spain and India could read or write? Really? Do you really believe that people could not read or write in these great cities? Listen, in Cairo, certainly in Alexandria, they had a library that was burnt in the 5th century. Certainly they could read or write. You can't make that excuse anymore. And don't Muslims say that the Quran was written down? Do they not tell us that a man named Zayd ibn Thabit was the secretary of Muhammad? He is the one that's given the responsibility for giving us the Uthmanic recension. The Uthmanic recension, what does that mean? It means it's a book, it's a codex. They date that to 650. So certainly they could write the Quran. If they could write the Quran, why couldn't they write about Muhammad? Where did they get the biographers get their material from? Where did Al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim? Where did Ibn Dawud? Where did Ibn Hisham, Al-Waqidi, Ibn Ishaq? Where did these guys get their material from? Now, you can ask your Muslim friends. We did a debate last Sunday at Speaker's Corner, and this came out. It's brilliant. You can go up on Fander Films and look at it and see what happened. They could not walk away from this, and they dare not walk away from this, because we now know that all of these biographies, every one of these sayings, these akhbar, as they call it, 600,000 of them that were given to Al-Bukhari alone. 600,000. He was to whittle down and throw away that which did not make any sense. He threw away 98% of it, only retained 2% of it, only retained 7,397. Out of 600,000, he whittled it down to 7,397. 2%. in the late 9th century. Why did he throw out 98%? And where is that 98%? Wouldn't you like to look at it? I would like to look at it. I would like to know what his criteria was for destroying it, and throwing it away. And how did he know in the 9th century what Muhammad said in the 7th century? He wasn't there. He never knew Muhammad. Everything that he was dependent on, and every one of these akhbars, are based on a chain of names called isnad. So-and-so got it from so-and-so, who got it from so-and-so, who got it from so-and-so, who got it from the companion of the Prophet. What's that tell you? Oral tradition. All based on oral tradition. Because none of the so-and-sos wrote down anything of what they passed on. Nothing was written down. Now can you see why the historians are asking these questions? They say, should we trust it? Should we not therefore go back to the 7th century and check out what actually happened? Now, any historian should do the same. That's the historical work. That's the historical task. And that's what we're going to do today. Because I don't trust that 9th century and 10th century material. I want to see exactly what happened in the 7th century. So, what do they find?